Electoral and Boundaries Commission, IEBC, has registered 1,521 new voters living in East and South Africa in the 2 weeks drive that ended on March the 6th. Now, South Africa registered the most numbers, standing at 665, followed by Tanzania with 361, then Uganda with 247. Rwanda and Burundi saw 201 and 47 new Kenyans registered, that's respectively. IEBC Chairman Wafula Chebukati says that within the same time there were 798 transfers, while 373 changed their particulars. Registration centers were based at the Kenyan High Commission and consulates in the respective countries. IEBC developed the policy on registration as voters for Kenyan citizens living outside the country and ensuring they vote in the general election. Of course, they'll just be voting for the position of president. And joining me in studio is the global chairman of the Kenya Diaspora Alliance, that's Dr. Shem Ochuodo. Thank you for joining us, Daktari.
Pleasure, Sophia.
What do you make of these figures? Disappointing or what you expected?
No, it's what we expected. IEBC set itself for failure from the word go, and we told them, but they didn't listen. In fact, about 2 weeks ago, I was telling an IEBC commissioner that they would be very lucky to get 5,000. So I'm not surprised with these figures. The major reason being, most Kenyans who go to the EAC region where they were registering, they don't need passports. IEBC has got this unconstitutional regulation 37. Which says diaspora can only register with passports. That applies for those who go to far-flung countries, but not the Ongata-Rongai diaspora. So that's problem number one.
What is the Ongata-Rongai diaspora?
Those who go just next door, say to Sudan, to Rwanda, Uganda, Tanzania, they don't need passports, regular passports as we understand it, to go there. The second problem for South Africa, and we did also communicate the same to IEBC, the registration center was in Pretoria. There are very few Kenyans in Pretoria. The majority of Kenyans are in Johannesburg, in Durban, in Cape Town. And we did encourage IEBC, why don't you do mobile registration like they were doing with northeastern Kenya? But thirdly, and perhaps most critical, we did say you must go to places where the majority of diaspora are. 600,000 Kenyans are in the United States. You can't talk of registering diaspora if you leave out US, you leave out UK, you leave out UAE, and so on. Those are the places where there are majority of Kenyans. This is part of why we are back to court. And we are hoping court will rule next week in our favor, that IEBC do a proper registration of diaspora, because this was sham. Finally, IEBC decided to do diaspora registration only 2 weeks. Yet a further discrimination. Why 2 weeks? While in the case of at home, it was for 1 whole month. So these are the prayers that we have tabled in court, and we are hoping the courts will listen to us. So, and finally, just before IEBC does any mass voter registration, they have to do mobilization and voter education, nil in the case of diaspora. So IEBC set itself for failure.
So you're saying all these pointers that you have outlined so eloquently for us this morning, you had submitted the same to IEBC. You call it ignorance. They ignored them. Or decided to set them aside.
I probably would call it impunity, blatant impunity, because the Constitution not only says Kenyans would be registered to vote, all Kenyans, including diaspora. But the Supreme Court, no lesser than the Supreme Court in May 2015, did instruct IEBC to put comprehensive infrastructure to register diaspora. None of that has happened. They were further instructed every year to put an annual report to these two speakers of parliament of what they had done. The first would have been September 2015, second, the September 2016, neither of which have been done. So we are back to court, both for mandamus, to compel IEBC to implement the court ruling, but also for contempt. Finally, the Joint Select Committee, the Orengo Kraitu Joint Parliamentary Select Committee, enhanced that decision of the Supreme Court, that they should not only file the report with Parliament, but also with the executive. Again, none of which has happened.
So what is the implication of your move to court? If the court finds in your favor, does it mean that IEBC has to, before the elections, conduct another registration even in the US? Because we're dealing with 5 months to a general election. This is pretty much a new commission that is in office, commissioners. Of course, the Secretariat has been there. There's institutional memory. But there's so many things pulling at the IEBC. Do you see that as perhaps one of the reasons why they could be dropping the ball in some areas?
Yeah, unfortunately, Sophia, it's always the diaspora that's the punchback. So whenever there's a problem, it's diaspora. And I actually think the greatest problem is not even the commissioners. The greatest problem we have with IBC is the secretariat, because the same words we're hearing from the new commissioners are the same excuses the secretariat have used. But again, when we were in court on Tuesday this week, the High Court judge hearing this matter did tell us that, look, IBC can only close the register 60 days to the election. So that's sometime early June, meaning if courts do decide that diaspora be registered, they can be. I also know IBC has been giving the excuse of auditing the register, but I'm also aware that the diaspora register is a slightly different register. So as a technology person, I can say all those could happen concurrently without fear of any contradiction or problem.
So you want the U.S. to be registered, Kenyans living in the U.S. in this particular round?
Absolutely.
Are you not taking into consideration that the IEBC chair had said, because of operational constraints, that perhaps let's begin with East Africa plus South Africa and then roll out to other countries as time unfolds, because this is still something they're, as IEBC, as an electoral body, they're still getting to settle in on and build all of the foundational blocks before then it can run automatically, or if you like?
IBC registration of diaspora is guided by Articles 82 and 83 of the Constitution. 82, which IBC is hiding behind, says there will be progressive registration of diaspora. Article 83, on the other hand, says IBC and the state shall provide maximum arrangements to enable Kenyans to vote. We are also alive to the fact that there is continuous voter registration, which happens at home, but never in the diaspora. So there are many reasons why diaspora are discriminated. But having said that, we have asked IBC to table evidence that they don't have resources. In fact, we've even gone out of our way to get partners, and we've written to IBC that partner A, multilateral partner, and partner B have said they'll be able to support if need be, if requested by IBC. So all this is more an excuse than a reason that IBC is using. And that's why we are back to court. Yeah. And one critical thing is, if IBC as a constitutional commission does not obey rules, a referee not obeying the rules, how do you expect the players to obey the rules? How about if tomorrow somebody decided I'm marching to State House to occupy, to rule as the president? How would you stop them if you yourself as a referee, you're not obeying those constitutional directives from the Constitution to Supreme Court to Parliament?
But IEBC, we have seen, has had financial constraints, even here at home, because what used to be in years past, in other general elections, what we call voter education, it was so much more vibrant. You'd see word out there, commercials, even across the board, showing even voters how this works.
Right.
So that in terms of first, what they need to do here at home is suffering. And you're saying, unfortunately, the diaspora at times is the punching bag.
Right.
But the question is, in terms even of the diaspora, are we seeing them really eager to participate? Because it's one thing for IBC to set up these registration centers and organize for the same to happen. It's another for those who argue that they're not even keen to be part of the process.
We must ask, why are they not keen? They're frustrated because they tell us, even if you guys struggle to get us to vote, you'll never vote. So they come back and tell us, we told you. So there's already that disenchantment that is induced by IBC and the state by themselves.
How is IBC to blame for them not wanting to vote?
Because it has not provided infrastructure. We did tell IBC. In fact, there are organizations that said we are willing to work with Kenya Diaspora Alliance and the embassies to provide civic and voter education at their expense. But again, none of this was taken up by IBC. But one crucial thing that IBC has never done, we've always said, can you lay the figures? Tell us, how much money do you need to register the diaspora, and for what? Instead, IBC sends 8 officials to Kampala. They don't need to send 8 officials. Is it per diems or what? Probably only 2 could do. And so and I hope media can help us. If the courts won't help us, or Parliament in this, can IBC table the evidence? What is that money they require that they don't have, which we can't also help them to get?
Okay. Finally, when is this matter being heard in court?
It was on Tuesday. They were told to prepare their defense to table in 7 days. So the court will give further directions next week, Tuesday.
All right. Thank you very much, Dr. Shamwa Chwotha, Global Chair of the Kenya Diaspora Alliance, with us here on World's View.